Good morning. Hope everybody's having a good Sunday. It's time for 49ers roster reset. Still waiting for further developments in free agency, further potential trade developments regarding Jimmy Garoppolo, but we have a long offseason ahead of us. There's still a lot of good players out on the market, and obviously a lot of moves still to be made, with the 49ers actually still having a lot of roster room left. So we'll take a look at it. We'll pop open the big sheet here for you. This is the 90-man depth chart. If you want to follow along, I'll put it in the chat section. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. There you go. Click on that. It'll open up the Google link. I'll make it a little bit smaller as we go through and talk about this position by position. So hope everybody's well. Go get your coffee, get settled in. This should be a good way to pass the Sunday as we wait for further movement along the front of roster building regarding the 49ers. But I think that at times like these, it's always good to remind ourselves to take a step back and view the totality of the full thing, not only timing-wise. Obviously, I've talked about the draft still come end of April. You have second-tier free agency going on right now. Adding and subtracting players is going to be a whole offseason long process. I look at the calendar, it's March 20th. You have to fast forward 6 months. Then we'll be at September 20th, and we'll still only be in like week 3 of the NFL season. So we still have half a year essentially before this really gets started in earnest. So that's why it's important to remember this is a marathon and not a sprint as far as roster building. I know the Jaguars are running this like it's the 100-meter dash, right? Spending all kinds of money, bringing in all kinds of players. But then again, I implore you to remember that the Jaguars are not a perennial winner in the NFL. So it's going to be a different set of challenges for every NFL team, depending on situation. Rams not signing many outside free agents at all this offseason, although they were able to bring in Allen Robinson. So that was an intriguing move for them as they look to sustain the loss of Odell Beckham Jr. for at least part of the season with a torn ACL from the Super Bowl. The 49ers, meanwhile, have brought in 4 outside free agents, and they have brought in essentially one bigger contract in Charvarius Ward. I'll also break down some salary cap stuff maybe in a later video. First, we're going to take a look at how the 49ers are looking as far as an all-around roster construction goes. So we're going to go through position by position, and we'll start from the top at the quarterback spot and go all the way down. So at QB, the Garoppolo-Baker Mayfield dynamic is what's most interesting in a larger picture situation for the 49ers right now, because obviously we have had the Deshaun Watson move happen. He's headed to the Cleveland Browns, and now the 49ers, if you take a look at the roster up on your screen, it's simple at the quarterback position. By the way, color coding on this, this red color means that a player is currently rehabbing from an injury. Yellow means that this player was re-signed or signed in this offseason. So at the quarterback room, Nate Sudfeld is back. He was re-signed for $2 million guaranteed just a couple weeks ago, right before free agency, actually. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously rehabbing from the shoulder surgery. So you have Trey Lance. You have the future. You have the guy that the 49ers traded so much draft capital to acquire just about a year ago. And now you wonder, okay, what exactly is going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo? So Watson to Cleveland. The Browns no longer need a quarterback. The Browns need to jettison a quarterback, though, and that's Baker Mayfield. So who needs a QB? Well, you have Indianapolis. You have Seattle, funny enough. You have the Carolina Panthers, because Sam Darnold isn't any good over there, and potentially the New Orleans Saints, although Jameis Winston, who got hurt last year, was playing some good football for them early in the season. We all know that Taysom Hill is not really a quarterback, even though they try to play him like one. You try to put the lipstick on the pig, but it's still a pig. Taysom Hill is an athlete, right? He could line up all over the field. He could do some nice stuff. He's definitely an effective weapon, but we saw what happened when the Saints tried to rely on him too much at the quarterback position. So they might be on the market to bolster that position, since it is the most important one in sports. So that's just a cursory look at a few teams that need a starting quarterback. Can more movement happen? Absolutely. But if you just want to set a market peripherally, well, that is kind of your preliminary setup right there. Those are the teams that might be interested in the quarterback. And then you have Baker Mayfield, who's obviously going to be out of a job in Cleveland. Then you have Jimmy Garoppolo, a little less obviously, but still obviously he's going to be out of a job in San Francisco. I mean, For crying out loud, Jimmy Garoppolo's already had his goodbye press conference. So it would take a major, major turn of events for the 49ers to have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster next year. I know the longer this drags out, the more people talk about that possibility. But I never rule out any possibilities, especially when John Lynch says stuff like we have plan A, plan B, plan C, and however many plans they have, depending on the situation. So, only the Sith deal in absolutes. You can go to an Obi-Wan Kenobi line for that. So you don't be sure of anything, but be ready for what's the most probable thing. And I'll tell you what, plan A for the 49ers is to have Trey Lance, who's currently second on that depth chart while Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the roster. The plan is to have Trey Lance take over in the 2022 season. The 49ers invested so much in Trey Lance. It was a situation in which they expected him to sit his first year as a rookie in 2021. I always go back to 318 pass attempts in college at North Dakota State. But I think it's all systems go for Trey. I think they're really happy with the development behind the scenes on the scout team. I think that you saw some of the leaked footage from practice. You see the ability that Kyle Shanahan wants out of that quarterback position as far as raising the ceiling as far as mobility goes from the quarterback position. And I think that, yes, the 49ers system is incredibly difficult to digest for a youngster or for even a veteran who's been unfamiliar with it. But I think they believe that Trey is made of the right stuff, and that's up here. If he's made of the right stuff up there, then he's going to be able to absorb whatever Kyle Shanahan is teaching. And we wonder what that quarterback market will yield the 49ers as far as a trade, because obviously Garoppolo coming off of the shoulder surgery. Obviously, we know that Trey Lance was selected in large part because of his ability to be mobile, which is the way that the quarterback position in the National Football League, as far as the new age QBs, is going. We also know that Jimmy Garoppolo has had other injuries, not just the shoulder injury, that might scare some teams away on the trade market. But then the counterbalance to all that is that Jimmy Garoppolo has been an amazingly effective leader in that 49ers locker room, on top of his efficiency as a quarterback. He's been more efficient than Baker Mayfield. He probably has a quicker release than Baker Mayfield. And from an athleticism standpoint, I think those two guys are probably comparable, right? You don't go out and say, oh my God, Baker Mayfield is seismically talented from a physical perspective. And nobody says that about Jimmy Garoppolo either. So my question is, when you look at this market and you look at the potential dynamic between these two quarterbacks, who goes first? Do the Indianapolis Colts want a slightly younger quarterback in Baker Mayfield? Or do they go for the older one in Jimmy Garoppolo, knowing that both of these guys have been hurt? Both of these guys have undergone shoulder surgery. Both of these guys might be physically limited compared to your high-end Deshaun Watsons, obviously, or your high-end Trey Lances. Who takes precedence in these trade discussions? And this is where I think a lot of people are finally starting to talk about it, but weren't at the start. There was just this gut reaction, this gut assumption that because Baker Mayfield was younger, that there was some kind of ceiling ascribed to him that was higher than Jimmy Garoppolo's. But if you think about it, if everybody in the National Football League is dreaming of and craving the ultimate dual threat quarterback, right? Somebody like Trey Lance, somebody like Deshaun Watson, if everybody wants to raise that ceiling up to stratospheric levels, they're ultimately going to either take the chance through the draft or through an improbable trade for a player like Deshaun Watson. You're not going to just sit there and settle on a long-term future with somebody like Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I think those, the ship has probably sailed on those days where you're handing out a 5-year contract for close to record money to a player like that. Patrick Mahomes changed the game in 2018, and then in 2019. You see the value of having a quarterback that can seismically raise the ceiling. And if that's the case, if NFL teams, if their standard operating procedure is going to be to go out there and try to find their next Mahomes, their next Watson, the 49ers try to do it with Trey Lance, then the upside potential between Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield doesn't even matter as much. To me, the market in this situation would be looking for a shorter term solution at quarterback. And if the market in general is looking for a shorter term solution at quarterback, then the market is going to value potential 2022 contributions and stability over any sort of 5-year window, which I would even question that Baker Mayfield has, because Baker Mayfield's had 4 years to prove himself with the Browns, and he's done some good stuff, but he certainly hasn't, proven that he's on the level of some of these long-term answers that obviously the Cleveland Browns wanted when they invested so much in Deshaun Watson. So if it's about year-to-year stability, if it's about, a bridge quarterback, so to speak, I don't, want to use that term too lightly, but if, you want something now, you want that maturity now, you want that leadership now, you want that, just plug and play aspect that can come from the position from a veteran who's established. You would have to think, especially since the Cleveland Browns came out and said they wanted an adult at quarterback, implying that Baker Mayfield was acting like a child, you have to think that Garoppolo might have earned himself some value this past season in his tutelage of Trey Lance and how well and how maturely he handled the situation with the 49ers. Still, it's a fascinating question to me. I don't know if people want more, Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield. But I do know that it's not a strict upside question, because if it were a strict upside question, the Cleveland Browns wouldn't have let go of Baker Mayfield in the first place. The San Francisco 49ers wouldn't have drafted Trey Lance in the first place. I think the league is changing. I think it's coming full circle back to the 90s when Mike Shanahan got to coach Steve Young and John Elway. But now you're seeing this dual threat quarterback take over the whole league with the emphasis that, we've seen dual threats obviously before throughout the last 30, 40 years of football, maybe more so over the past 10 years. But winning from the pocket is so key. And if you could find a quarterback who could deliver from the pocket and also be able to bail and take out, the opposing defenses with his legs when it's necessary, well, then you potentially have the best of both worlds. So when you have that potential, then you have a player that a team is willing to commit for a longer period of time. But I think in the case of Garoppolo and in the case of Mayfield, obviously quarterbacks who have done good things. I think Garoppolo has done more good things than Baker Mayfield. He's obviously a little bit older. I think that you're looking at a different kind of market. And it's going to be very interesting to see if the 49ers are able to deal Garoppolo before Mayfield, considering that those market parameters will be a little bit different. Here's one thing that I do know, though, and this is tough for any quarterback coming off of shoulder surgery. If you're going to be trading for your starter in 2022, if you're any franchise in the league, it's tough to put him up there in an opening press conference wearing a sling on his throwing shoulder, right? So that's absolutely something that must be kept in mind as these, and I've come around a little bit on that too. But as these trade developments potentially materialize, it's one of those situations where, Garoppolo had an injury history, right? Garoppolo, obviously, that was a huge reason, if not the primary reason, of the 49ers moved to Trey Lance in that 2021 draft last season. So that, to me, was already embedded in Garoppolo's trade value or lack thereof. The injury history makes it tough to commit significant resources. We're talking first round type resources in a player. That's why I've always, for the past few weeks, I'm talking conditional pick. If you're trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, make him play 14 or 15 games before you're giving up something that's too high. So I still see conditional pick as a good setting for this. But when you're dealing with injury history, that is, initially I kind of categorized the shoulder surgery as just part of the injury history. But from an optics standpoint, for these NFL teams, especially when they can kind of bide their time, as now that they're out of the running for Deshaun Watson and, all this and all that, if you're still only looking for kind of a stopgap measure or something that's a little bit of a shorter term measure, that shoulder surgery that's much more recent, that adds a different twist to injury history. It's not just general injury history. It's, oh my God, we are signing a quarterback or trading for a quarterback who we're going to introduce, and at his opening press conference, he's going to be wearing a sling. And obviously the quarterback's biggest tool, right, is his arm, his throwing arm. So he's in a sling, doesn't look too good. You could see why teams would be a little bit hesitant here in this situation, especially given the fact that Garoppolo's surgery was so recent. So due diligence is always something that we talk about, and we'll see if that due diligence has finally moved the process along, and we'll see what the whole Mayfield situation is. All right, God, the comment section is blowing out. Yeah, somebody's talking about Mayfield to the Seahawks. You obviously can see that. I just think presumably much less likely that a quarterback is moved within his own division. So if Mayfield does go to Seattle, well, then Jimmy Garoppolo to the Colts makes a whole lot of sense. And I just don't, I hate being kind of just herding along with the sheep. And I feel that everybody just said, oh, well, Indianapolis is going to want Baker Mayfield because Baker Mayfield said that he'd want to go there. But I don't think it's quite that simple. Yes, might Baker Mayfield end up in Indianapolis? Of course. But why don't we put a little bit more thought into the whole process and be like, okay, wait, what is Indianapolis looking for? Are they looking for a 5-year solution at quarterback? Are they looking to do something like Cleveland did with Deshaun Watson? And obviously there are not a lot of Deshaun Watsons around given his combination of physical skill set and obviously talent from the pocket. Or are they looking for more, I think, catch up to the rest of the league with a draft pick in the next couple of years of a quarterback like Trey Lance, a quarterback that can develop into somebody like Deshaun Watson. And if they're looking for the latter, which I think is much more likely given the current state of this quarterback market with Garoppolo and Mayfield topping the available list, well, then they're going to be looking for different characteristics higher up on their list, right? They're probably going to want, especially with a good roster this year, short-term reliability, maturity, ability to read a defense, all this kind of stuff. And I think in a lot of ways there, Jimmy Garoppolo might be a preferable option to Baker Mayfield. So that's just what I'm tossing out there as far as priority list of these teams looking to make these deals for quarterbacks, because you have to look at both short-term and long-term plans when they're building their priority list. All right, let's move on to the next position. Let's move on to running back. So if you take a zoom in on the running back spot, and I mean, just let me know in the comment section if you want me to zoom in manually on these, but I think you could pinch it with your phone, make it a little bit bigger. You see the 49ers with Elijah Mitchell at the top of the room, followed by Trey Sermon, JaMycal Hasty's in the yellow because they re-signed him this offseason, and Kyle Juszczyk. First things first, the 49ers absolutely will need to add another running back or maybe even two. For camp, I think you're going to want to have more than 5 bodies in that room, counting Juszczyk, the fullback there. But this position has been so injury prone for the 49ers over the years that, boy, last year people were trying to criticize the 49ers for carrying Wayne Gallman on the team at the same time as these other running backs. It's a good thing that they had so many of them. Now, Gallman had to be cut because the 49ers got through training camp essentially without injuries. But if they would have had Gallman in the regular season, even in week 1, week 2, they would have been really happy because the injury started rolling in right away. Raheem Mostert obviously only saw 2 carries against the Detroit Lions. The decimation in this room, and my theory is because Shanahan wants physical guys that are also fast. So they're moving fast. They're probably not as big as your standard 220-pound bell cow. The only really big back that the 49ers have had since they let go of Carlos Hyde in 2017 has been Jacques Patrick, and he hardly played last year. So, I mean, this room needs depth. So we know that Elijah Mitchell, we know the 49ers call him Drano because he's so able effectively to find holes, right? He's able to slip his body through there, get the extra yardage. Mitchell had a hell of a rookie season. The 49ers have a right to be really excited about him. But what are the 49ers going to do beyond that? My question is Trey Sermon going to be a better inside zone runner? Is he going to be better, period, in year 2 to pair with Trey Lance and some of that read option zone read game? I don't know, but that's a big question. And it looks to me, unless the 49ers get it back off the bargain bin here, they're going to go back to that well in the draft. And there are some names in the draft they can go get that we're going to talk about here over the next couple of months. But the 49ers have 9 picks, and they need more in this running back room. And, I said that I would ask you if I would zoom in. I don't know what the comments are saying right now, but I'll take a look in a bit here. We could zoom in on that room right now. It's highlighted in blue. Mitchell, Sermon, Hasty, Juszczyk. I mean, it's thin right now. You need a little bit more there. And this whole narrative that just anybody could fit into the 49ers running back room and be fine, that's not true. You can find guys on the cheap with good scouting that can fit in, but you can't really just expect anybody to deliver at running back. The 49ers have made that mistake or run into that problem over the past couple of years. You remember that Green Bay game in 2020 on Thursday night. That wasn't good, right? So you ideally need players with a skill set, either Mitchell's burst and Drano-like skill set to get through those holes, or Raheem Mostert, who was able to get to the edge. They obviously didn't re-sign him. He's now with Miami. But you definitely do need players whose skill set fits the system. And that lends the question, will the system change with Trey Lance at quarterback? Are the 49ers going to run more inside? Is it Lance going to be taking the keepers to the outside? Are you going to see a guy like Sermon have a little bit more of a field day rampaging through the middle of the field? I don't know the firm answers to these questions because we've only seen 8 quarters of Trey, and the 49ers haven't been able to operate around him as QB1. But I suspect certain things based on the skill set, and that's going to be really interesting at the running back position. All right, let's go to receiver. So I'll highlight receiver right here for you, right here. Ray McLeod, he is the latest addition for the 49ers. He in yellow. 5'9", shutterbug kind of speed, led the league in punt return yardage last year. Also had 38 catches for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He'd be 4th on the 49ers, the 2021 49ers, was with those 38 catches. In comparison, last year's special teams weapon / wideout, Trent Sherfield, only had 9 catches on the entire year. And the 49ers were really happy with Sherfield's contributions on special teams, especially as a gunner. He's an ace in that phase of the game. But Ray McLeod, he's an ace too, at a spot the 49ers probably needed more, because Ray McLeod is a returner. The 49ers kick return game was number 32 in 2020, number 32, which is dead last in 2021. They need a spark there. They want the punt returning to be better. So McLeod's going to do both. He's going to return kicks. He's going to return punts. But, 38 catches last season for Ray McLeod with the Pittsburgh Steelers lends me to believe, especially given Kyle Shanahan's history with Taylor Gabriel, another shutterbug type of player in Cleveland and Atlanta, I think they're going to use Ray McLeod as a gadget weapon. I mean, just go to his tape. First play of his highlight reel, Ray McLeod's running end around. And the 49ers love to run misdirection on the ground, right? And I think they're going to run it even more so with Trey Lance. Because you can gash that middle if you could get that offense spread out. That defense spread out. So we see a lot when the 49ers were struggling to pass protect, when they had Mullins or Beathard in there, they would establish the pass game essentially by running a perimeter rushing attack. And you'd run Debo outside. I mean, they did this even with the Jimmy Garoppolo, especially as his health started to fail him late last season. Obviously, you saw more and more of Debo Samuel. But you stretch that perimeter, and then you can cut up inside with guys like Trey Sermon. This is all theoretical. But if you can do that, well, then that running game can get going, because you need the pass and the run to balance each other. And sometimes you can substitute in for the pass. You can substitute a creative run game to the outside. And I think that a guy like Ray McLeod, with his ability to run that end-around game, maybe, even his ability to catch some of those short screen passes, I think he could be instrumental in allowing the 49ers offense to unlock the balance that it really, really needs. At tight end, will the 49ers draft George Kittle's replacement? I don't know. Will they sign George Kittle's complement? Strike that. I didn't say the 49ers should replace George Kittle. Don't take that out of context. I should have read my screen down there. Will the 49ers draft George Kittle's complement? Will they sign George Kittle's complement? I thought that they might try to be in on somebody like Austin Hooper, but he went to Tennessee. The 49ers have long dreamt of a 2 tight end attack, and maybe Charlie Warner will help them do that. Second-year player coming out of Georgia for the 49ers, or about to enter his 3rd year, isn't he? Yeah. So Charlie Warner is a player who's developed into a stronger frame, who has shown the ability on tape to high point some footballs, who the 49ers might throw to a little bit more as he evolves further into his career. But I think that history doesn't lie. I think the 49ers' actual actions don't lie. They tried to bring in Jordan Reed in 2020, got him off of the flyer heap, right, the scrap heap. And yes, he and Kittle weren't simultaneously healthy in that season for more than a few plays. But you know that Kyle Shanahan watched the New England Patriots back when they had Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, and they're able to overwhelm through versatility at the tight end position. I mean, even the Patriots now are trying to do that. So it absolutely would not surprise me if the 49ers went and tried to dig into that tight end well, either through the draft or, Austin Hooper was a player who played with Shanahan before, obviously off the table now, but it would be fascinating to me to see what the 49ers do there, because between Kittle and Werner, you like where you're at to start the room, but you still got to round it out. And they haven't re-signed Dwelly. I don't think they will re-sign Dwelly to anything. If they do, it won't be anything substantive. It won't be, oh my God, you're a tight end too. I think that Werner surpassed Dwelly this year, and that's all something to keep an eye out for, because the 49ers, with their versatile positionless skill position offense, so important to be effective at that tight end position. There is so much work to do for the 49ers on the offensive line. And we'll zoom in on this here because, this is the one that I hammer home all the time. And I'll highlight it. We'll make it big. Your left tackle is set in Trent Williams, obviously. You hope that Smack is set. I haven't heard an official word there yet, but he's leaning toward coming back for his 14th NFL season. And you hope that Mike McGlinchey, who's obviously shaded in red there, is able to be back by week 1. And if Mike McGlinchey is not able to be back from his quad tear by week 1, well, you've got a world of hurt along that 49ers offensive line. So far, they brought 2 players back this offseason, and Colton McKivitz, exclusive rights free agent, and Jake Brendel, unrestricted free agent, who they signed to a 1-year deal. Brendel's max back up at center. McKivitz, I think he could play guard or tackle. I haven't been particularly impressed with him yet, but he's depth, at least for the offseason. Jalen Moore is on his rookie contract. Does he play guard or tackle moving forward? They drafted Jalen Moore out of Western Michigan as a tackle who they thought would play guard. But then Moore ended up being their top swing tackle at the start of last season. Then Tom Compton superseded him. And they weren't all too happy with Moore as a rookie. He played a little bit against the Colts when he started in place of Trent Williams. Bad procedure penalty killed the 49ers drive. I don't know if he was playing out of position, if they really thought in the offseason he was going to be a guard, so they only prepared him a guard, but then he played. Toward the end of the preseason, we saw Moore get more and more time at left tackle, but the 49ers were obviously, thin at that position, and they talked about him needing to be a guard at the NFL level. So with these 2 guard spots that I've highlighted right now empty at left guard and right guard, and the 49ers did tender Daniel Brunskill, but he hasn't signed it yet, so he's not in there. I just wonder how the 49ers want to try to get better, because right guard wasn't good last year. Interior offensive line has cost them several times, especially in the playoffs over the past 3 seasons. And Laken Tomlinson is gone. So who fills that left guard spot? You could put right here, you could put Aaron Banks in there, but you're putting a whole lot of trust at a really important position in a player who has played, 5 garbage time snaps in the NFL? So Banks could be there. I'm not saying I'm against it, but be ready for more permutations. The 49ers found Laken Tomlinson off the scrap heap in 2017 for a 5th-round pick. So it's entirely possible that they think they don't have to go premium money at guard. They can find scrap heap guys they turn into effective players. But would that come without risk? Absolutely not. That would be something that would be tough for the 49ers to execute again. And that's why that guard position really worries me, because even if you put Banks at left guard, even if Daniel Brunskill signs his RFA tender, well, boy, you probably have a worse offensive line than you did last year, because Alex Mack's not getting any younger. Neither is Trent Williams. And, Mike McGlinchey is coming off a quad injury. Your backup for him, primarily Tom Compton, is not even with the football team anymore. He's with the Denver Broncos. So 49ers have work to do on the offensive line. If I had to tell you the biggest concern with this 49ers roster as we speak right now on March 20th, it is the offensive line, hands down. People can be concerned about their lack of ability to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They could be concerned about potentially a lack of depth in the secondary. They could be concerned about all this and all that. Throw it out the window. The biggest concern is the 49ers' lack of depth right now and lack of answers on the offensive line. And I'm not saying this to be an alarmist. I'm just saying this to say that, hey, 49ers better get on top of it, and they still have a lot of offseason to go. So it's not fair to bury them right now We need to see what they do. We know the track record of turning guys like Laken Tomlinson from, scrap heap players into $13 million players. That's all great, but actions need to happen for the 49ers along the offensive line, whether it be through free agency, mid-tier free agency right now, or through the draft, where you should look up Luke Fortner from Kentucky, because I talk about an apprenticeship for Alex Mack. Well, Luke Fortner from Kentucky, expected to be a mid-round pick, could be a player that the 49ers pick for that Alex Mack apprenticeship. And by that I mean that Alex Mack very well could retire now, but likely it won't be until after next season. The guy was the NFL center of the decade in the 2010s. I mean, the guy was an all-pro perennially. And Cal Berkeley grad, I went to Stanford, but we know those Berkeley guys can be smart too. Alex Mack is definitely a wealth of football knowledge. And this position is so important to have a smart guy in and to have an experienced guy in. We saw the 49ers go off the rails in 2020 when they're on their third and then their fourth string center. So to prevent complete catastrophe moving forward, like we saw in that 2020 season, when Seattle wouldn't stop blitzing the 49ers up the A-gap, to prevent that type of catastrophe after Alex Mack potentially retires, which might happen after this coming season, why don't the 49ers go out and draft a player who can play guard in the interim, since those guard positions are open, but can learn from Alex Mack at center and then potentially take that torch moving forward. And, the Niners don't have a first-round pick. They start at number 61. Assuming they don't trade up for a pick, you have to be able to find a guy who's going to be, not Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, who's going to go in the first round. You have to find somebody who's going to be around a little bit later. And for that, look up Luke Fortner from Kentucky. He can move. He can play guard. He could play center. He can learn at guard. He can eventually take over at center if he understands Shanahan's scheme well enough moving forward. And I think that's the type of play that the 49ers can make. All right, I'm scrolling down. We're going to move to the other side of the football, defensive line. Samson Ebukam is actually a fascinating piece. His cap hit here for this 2022 season is about $8 million. And so people are like, okay, whoa, that's a little expensive for Samson Ebukam. And then they're saying, well, the 49ers might have to restructure some more deals to A, sign more free agents, and B, fit their draft class in, even though that's only going to cost $7.7 million. But they want to fit their draft class in under the cap. So they always say, oh, well, the 49ers should give Samson Ebukam, he should take a pay cut. And to that I say, well, is Samson Ebukam actually overpaid right now? Because take a look at this. This is a gelling defensive line. This is the performance of the 49ers D-line over the course of the past season, with red being bad and blue being good. And we could divide it up into splits between weeks 1 and 7, weeks 8 to the NFC title game, and then even more aggressively, week 14, the Bengals game, to the NFC title game. So remember, blue is good, red is bad. Yes, Ebukam was bad from weeks 1 to 7. But look how good he was week 8 onward, and then even better from week 14 onward. And this is a guy who played in a 3-4 for the LA Rams before this. Super athletic. And the 49ers said, hey, he's going to be a good Leo kind of edge rusher. He's going to work in the 4-3 in the wide 9. He's going to be coming around the edge. He's going to be a guy that we want on our football team. And it didn't look good from weeks 1 to 7 when you see all this red for Ebukam in that third row. But it got really good from weeks 8 and then especially from week 14 onward. Another player the 49ers should be excited about is Charles Omenihu in the blue throughout all of last season, pre-trade from the Texans, post-trade from the Texans. Hell, Arden Key, 10.1, 9.8, way up there. Looked awesome after week 8, after they moved him inside, which, it's not only Key or Ebukam who's a fascinating piece. It's Key. How much can you re-sign him for if you do as the 49ers? If you don't re-sign these guys like Arden Key, how much do you believe in Chris Kasarik to just take the next random free agent and turn him into an excellent player on the defensive line? So these are all things that the 49ers are weighing. But the fact that Samson Ebukam came on so strong at the end of last season makes me think, oh, he's not going to take a pay cut, but he might restructure his deal so the 49ers can keep him aboard throughout his prime as an edge rusher for a better price. The same thing with Jawan Jennings, exclusive rights free agent. So it's not the same thing, but slightly different. Exclusive rights free agent, but still hasn't signed his tender because the 49ers are trying to figure out if they can sign him to a longer team deal so he can't hit the market next offseason and then command an untenable amount of money from the football team. So fascinating stuff on the defensive line. Check out that article. That breaks it all down. And we'll see if the 49ers bring in another draftee there, or, that edge market is not looking bad right now. This is from Spot Track. So this is the available edge market. Look, you got Zadarius Smith, Calais Campbell, Jason Pierre-Paul, Akeem Hicks, who's, whatever. This is just a broader list of defensive linemen from Spot Track. But you got Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Anthony Barr, Carl Nassib from the Raiders, Jadeveon Clowney, obviously. Carlos Dunlap is on that edge market after running over 49ers right tackle, former 49ers right tackle, Tom Compton for that safety last year. So 49ers could be waiting out a bargain to pair with Nick Bosa on that edge rusher market. All right, moving on. Here we go to the linebacker spot. If and when Azeez Al-Shaair resigns, and Azeez Al-Shaair has a restricted free agent tender on him, so theoretically another team can offer him more money, but down 10 on Azeez. What in that scenario would happen to Dre Greenlaw? Would the 49ers just roll with Warner, Greenlaw, Al-Shaair, bump Flanagan Fowles down to the fourth linebacker spot, have Oren Burks as well, and have 5 backers, so have a really quality unit. Remember, Oren Burks, they signed due to special teams from Green Bay, so he's not going to be a full-time linebacker unless he has to. Would the 49ers do that with Al-Shaair, or would it be a situation where they move Greenlaw? Because Greenlaw is in his contract year. You think you might not be able to re-sign him next year if you get a lower round. You got a 6th or a 7th or a pick swap or whatever it was for Jonas Griffith last offseason at the end of camp. So do you move Greenlaw in that situation? I don't know, but the signing of Oren Burks, because he is capable linebacker depth, not starting caliber depth, but capable depth, it makes me wonder what exactly the 49ers plan might be for somebody like Dre Greenlaw. Because Fred Warner's obviously not going anywhere. They just signed Demetrius Flanagan Fowles to 1-year extension, and we're waiting on if Al-Shaair takes his restricted free agent tender and signs it or not. All right, up to the defensive back position. Scroll down a little bit further. What to do at nickelback? As you can see, nickel is empty right there. Charvarius Ward, big signing, bigger money signing for anybody saying the 49ers don't spend. Well, they have, 5 or 6 different players who have set market record contracts at their respective positions when they sign since Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over. Because of that, the 49ers are up against the salary cap, and they have to make maneuvers to stay under it. Yet, in spite of that, they were able to sign Charvarius Ward to what I think is only a $3.8 million cap hit in his first year. So the 49ers have cornerback 1. I've talked plenty of that. My bigger intrigue is George Odom, the safety. Missed 0 tackles in the box last season. He's only 6'1". He's only 201 pounds, but George Odom can fly. First team All-Pro special teamer a couple years back. I think Odom plays quite a bit. I think the 49ers utilize 3 safety sets. Obviously, Jimmy Ward doesn't come off the field, but remember, they haven't re-signed Jaquiski Tart. Safety interchangeability is important. Maybe George Odom is a guy who takes on a bigger role than he did with the Indianapolis Colts, who by all accounts were really, really happy with his play. So, I wonder about nickelback. I wonder about where Odom will fit in at safety. And when I talk about the nickel position, I'm thinking here, it's obviously blank with K'Wan Williams not having been re-signed yet. There's a chance the 49ers shift Mosley, who you see right here. So we'll paste special here, post Emmanuel Mosley down a little bit lower. There's a chance the 49ers move Emmanuel Mosley into that nickelback spot on passing downs, and then shift Ambry Thomas to nickelback on those passing downs, or vice versa, depending on who's more comfortable. So I'll actually make that addition to the depth chart, which you just saw in front of you. And to me, permutations are extremely, extremely likely because the 49ers don't want to go out and spend money on a veteran nickelback, nor might they be able to afford that at this point of the process. But Odom will be in that safety rotation. Charvarius Ward is your top cornerback and that's where it stands right now. Specialists remain the same. Robbie Gould, your kicker. Pepper, your long snapper. Mitch Wishnowsky is the punter for the 49ers. So I hope that you enjoyed this quick look through the roster. And by quick, I guess I meant 30 minutes. I think that we've already gone. Oh, whoa, we've gone 40 minutes. My goodness. Hundreds of comments. Jason Hurley, good friend Jason Hurley, thinks the 49ers should sign a veteran nickel cornerback. I agree. The problem is, what is the veteran nickel cornerback market? Maybe you sign an outside guy who could also play inside. Charvarius Ward has played some inside as well. So maybe you do run a rotation, because I think Mosley's a capable corner. Obviously, Ward's a capable corner. Who is Ambry Thomas at this point? Capable corner? No. I mean, he came along at the end of last season, but he struggled in the NFC title game. Bottom line is the 49ers play Cooper Kupp and obviously Allen Robinson now for the Rams twice this season at least. They also have to face that AFC West and Devontae Adams, who's now with the Raiders. And I know 49ers fans don't like the idea of being torched or losing to the Raiders. So you got to get that cornerback position better. That's where Ward comes in. But I think you still want to develop and play Ambry Thomas. So a potential solution either a nickel, or it could be kicking Mosley inside on passing downs and bringing Thomas into the game. So yes, Craig Smith, the Niners used to slide Carlos Rogers inside on nickel. It's something Vic Fangio used to do. Wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers did that as well. So yeah, we've just gone through all the positions. You guys are fun. Thank you for all of the comments. I'm not reading them all. This is not a Q&A. We're going to do a separate Q&A in a little bit later. I did answer a couple questions though, but that is the update on the 49ers roster, which obviously this offseason has focused on special teams, new returner in McLeod, ace in Oren Burks. I think that was the weakest part of this roster when we look at this thing in its totality. And I'll zoom out for you here again. The 49ers have 44 of 53 spots filled right now on their 53-man roster. So they need, a couple more free agents probably, because then you have 9 draftees coming in. So you only have 9 spots available right now, but this is my projected 53, by the way. But you want to have the right amount to foster the healthiest type of competition. You don't want to have too many guys so that nobody has a chance. Some guy, or you don't have too many guys so that only a few guys have a chance to make the team. You want that entire draft class to be competing. So I'd say 2 more outside hires for the 49ers, 2 more outside signings, then go to the draft, fill it out with your 9 draft picks and see where you are. Make the plug and play signings if you need to past then. But this team was never going to be too wild in free agency this year just because of the cap situation. And here you see it. Special teams was a hindrance. Ray McLeod is aboard now for the 49ers. They brought in Oren Burks and George Odom, good special teams player as well. So they've definitely focused on that portion of the game. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. Comments still rolling in. Right now, you guys need to subscribe. Subscribe right now. You will not regret it. Good stuff on this channel. Part 7 of the Trey Lance video breakdown will be coming soon. I'm doing an episode per quarter breaking down Trey Lance tape of every single game this year. So be sure to check that out. And yes, Odom is a gunner too. Quick salary cap question. I always get suckered into your questions, which is why you should subscribe and be surprised when I do answer, because I do like to answer these guys. Dan asks, what are they going to do for money? They need $7.7 million to sign the rookie. Draft choices. They can, like I said, they can extend Samson Ebicom, because I don't think he's in line for a pay cut. I think he's in line for an extension. You could spread that cap hit out. You can extend Jimmy Ward. Those are just 2 possible moves for the 49ers to open up more space for the draft class, but they have plenty of time before that has to happen. All right, guys, good stuff. We have just told it like it is, which is all we can do. Go through the roster, tell it like it is. Everybody sub to the channel. We'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for joining, and have a great Sunday.